Come on, I'll drive you to work. Look at it this way, Dad. You get a chance at another picture.
Only this time, don't make a face when they shoot it.
I didn't make a face.
In the soft, golden haze of 1970s television, 8 is Enough felt like home. A widowed father, 8 children, a kitchen full of noise, and a living room that somehow always had space for more. Week after week, millions tuned in not just for the storylines, but for the warmth, the feeling that no matter how chaotic life became, love would somehow hold it all together. But time, as it always does, rewrote the script. The laughter faded. The bright young faces aged, or vanished far too soon. Behind the scenes, pain grew quietly, like shadows stretching across the set. There were prescriptions meant to calm the nerves that later became chains. There were illnesses fought in silence. There were hearts that never truly recovered from early fame, or from the loneliness that followed it. Some of these actors died in obscurity, others in scandal, and some, too many, left us before the world was ready to let them go. This isn't just about a show. It's about the people who gave it soul. The fathers, the daughters, the sons, and the forgotten friends who stood in the background but carried entire stories in a single glance. If these memories stir something in you, if you remember the Bradfords not as characters, but as family, then don't just watch. Stay with us. Subscribe to this channel, because behind every familiar smile lies a story worth telling, and some of them you've never heard before. Dick Van Patten, Tom Bradford. Dick Van Patten was more than just Tom Bradford. To millions of viewers, he was the very definition of a gentle American patriarch. Fair, warm, a touch overwhelmed, but always steady at the center of the storm. On 8 is Enough, his character didn't just anchor a family of 8. He anchored a generation that longed for comfort, familiarity, and a sense of home in their living rooms. Yet behind the calm, familiar face was a man whose life in showbiz had started long before, and whose journey through Hollywood mirrored the industry's evolution itself. Born in Queens in 1928, Richard Vincent Van Patten was a child actor who graced Broadway stages before he even hit his teens. While other kids played in the park, Van Patten was performing under the lights, developing a professionalism that would carry him through decades in front of the camera. From early roles in the 1950s series Mama, to later comedic appearances in Mel Brooks classics like Spaceballs and Robin Hood, Men in Tights, he mastered both drama and satire with effortless charm. But it was 8 is Enough that immortalized him. As Tom Bradford, he wasn't flawless. He fumbled through parenthood, wrestled with grief, and wore exhaustion like a second skin. That vulnerability was what made him real. Audiences trusted him, and perhaps, for a time, so did Hollywood. Yet as the series ended and the industry shifted toward younger, edgier content, Van Patten's roles began to shrink. He never vanished, but the era that once celebrated wholesome father figures moved on. Off-screen, he reinvented himself as an author, a sports commentator, and even a pet food mogul with his Natural Balance brand. But even as success found him again, there were struggles, health issues, the creeping toll of type 2 diabetes, and the quiet ache of fading from the spotlight. He died in 2015 at age 86, surrounded by family, but largely forgotten by the industry he had once helped define. And yet, for those who remember the Bradfords, Dick Van Patten remains the soul of that makeshift family, steady, kind, and forever waiting at the head of the table. Diana Hyland, Joan Bradford. She was supposed to be the heart of the Bradford family, the calm in the storm, the elegant presence that kept everything grounded. As Joan Bradford, Diana Hyland entered 8 is Enough not just as a mother of 8, but as a symbol of strength wrapped in grace. But before her character had the chance to grow, before audiences could fall in love with her gentle resolve, Diana was gone. Not written out by the writers, but taken by something far crueler, reality. Born Joan Diana Gentner in Ohio, Hyland moved to New York in her teens with fire in her eyes and ambition in her bones. She was striking, yes, but more than that, she was magnetic. Broadway noticed. Television noticed. She became a favorite of 1960s dramas, a regular on Peyton Place, a familiar face in The Twilight Zone, and a chameleon in guest roles that demanded emotional weight far beyond what women were usually given at the time. She wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing excellence. and she found it. By the 1970s, she was still captivating, now with a sharper edge and deeper control. In 1976, she gave one of her most poignant performances as the mother of a boy trapped in a bubble, portrayed by a young John Travolta. Their on-screen connection bled into life, and the two fell deeply in love. She was 18 years his senior, but he adored her. It was, by all accounts, real, but fate had other plans. Hyland was already battling breast cancer when she joined 8 is Enough. She filmed just 4 episodes before her condition worsened. She died on March 27, 1977, in Travolta's arms, at just 41 years old. The writers quietly explained Joan Bradford's absence in the rest of the first season. And when season 2 returned, it was with the somber acknowledgement that the mother of the Bradfords had died, echoing life in a way television rarely dares. She left behind one son in real life, and a nation of TV watchers who never quite got to say goodbye. In her final roles, there's a quiet urgency, as if she knew time was slipping. Diana Hyland didn't just play mothers. She embodied the fragile beauty of love, loss, and the cruel timing of both. Lani O'Grady, Mary Bradford. There was always a quiet weight behind Mary Bradford's eyes. As the eldest daughter on 8 is Enough, she carried herself like someone twice her age, measured, intelligent, always holding the emotional balance of the family in her hands. But behind that composed television persona was Lani O'Grady, a young woman who, even at the height of her success, was grappling with a storm she couldn't control. Born Lanita Rose O'Grady, Lani came from a Hollywood lineage. Her brother, Don Grady, had charmed the nation on My Three Sons, and her mother, Mary Grady, was a formidable talent agent in the industry. Fame was in her blood, but so, too, were the pressures that often come with it. By the time she joined 8 is Enough, Lani was already battling the early signs of anxiety and panic disorder. She would later admit that, during filming, her hands would shake so violently from fear that she sometimes couldn't leave her dressing room. Doctors misdiagnosed her. Medications multiplied. What began as a treatment plan became a prison. Xanax, Valium, Librium, then Prozac, then Vicodin. A revolving door of rehab and recovery attempts followed her into adulthood. At one point, she found purpose helping others, working as a recovery counselor. But relapse is a cruel echo. In 1998, while seeking detox treatment at Cedars-Sinai, Lani claimed she experienced a deeply traumatic incident involving a hospital staff member. She filed a lawsuit against the institution, a quiet, unresolved legal fight that lingered in the background of her final years. The case remained open when she passed away. On September 25, 2001, just a week before her 47th birthday, Lani was found dead in her California home. The toxicology report was brutal, fatal levels of Vicodin and Prozac. But statistics can't explain sorrow. They can't capture what it feels like to watch someone who once lit up television screens slowly vanish behind the scenes. To fans, she'll always be Mary, the calm, wise, loving sister. But to those who look deeper, Lani O'Grady is also a symbol of how easily Hollywood forgets the fragile souls behind its brightest lights. And how some battles, no matter how bravely fought, are heartbreakingly quiet. Adam Rich, Nicholas Bradford. He was America's little brother. With a bowl haircut, wide eyes, and that unmistakable spark of innocence, Adam Rich didn't just play Nicholas Bradford. He was Nicholas Bradford. The youngest of the 8 siblings on 8 is Enough. His very presence lit up every scene, injecting the show with mischief, warmth, and a kind of pure, untamed honesty that only a child could bring. But the magic that made him unforgettable on screen became the very weight he couldn't shake in real life. Born in Brooklyn in 1968, Adam was only 9 when he stepped into the role that would define him. In a sea of talented ensemble cast members, he stood out, not just because of his age, but because of his timing, his intuition, and his uncanny ability to make people feel. For 5 seasons, America watched him grow up, and when the show ended, many assumed the future would only get brighter for the boy they once wanted to adopt through their TV screens. But fame, so kind to him as a child, grew colder with age. After 8 is Enough, Adam drifted between scattered roles: Code Red, Fantasy Island, Dungeons and Dragons, but none recaptured that early spark. Like many former child actors, he struggled to find his place once the spotlight dimmed. By the early 90s, personal struggles began to surface. In 1991, he was arrested after breaking a pharmacy window in a moment of desperation. His TV father, Dick Van Patten, stepped in to bail him out. Days later, he was rearrested for shoplifting. He didn't fight the charges. The world watched a beloved icon stumble, and it hurt. He tried to move forward, but setbacks returned. In 2002, he was pulled over after nearly hitting a police vehicle on a closed-off stretch of highway in Los Angeles. The incident led to a DUI charge and made headlines again, forcing Adam to confront what it meant to grow up famous and broken. Still, he remained deeply self-aware. In interviews, he often said he never wanted celebrity, only to act. He resented the glare of fame, not the craft. He studied acting seriously, even training alongside future greats like Kevin Spacey and Val Kilmer at Chatsworth High. He knew the art, but the industry no longer knew him. On January 8, 2023, Adam Rich passed away at his home in Los Angeles. The official cause was an accidental overdose involving prescription medication. He was just 54. It was a quiet ending to a story that once started so brightly. And for many, the news was a jolt, a reminder of how easily we forget the people we once watched grow up before our eyes. Adam Rich didn't vanish. He faded, slowly, painfully, like a memory we don't want to admit is gone. But for those who remember Nicholas Bradford, he will always be the little boy with a crooked smile, a heart full of mischief, and a face that once made the whole country believe in family. Time has a cruel way of softening the edges of memory. But for those who grew up with 8 is enough. The faces of Tom, Joan, Mary, and little Nicholas remain as vivid as ever, etched not just in grainy footage, but in the warmth of after-dinner reruns, in the way families once gathered around the TV together, believing, if only for an hour, that love could hold chaos at bay. And yet, what happened after the credits rolled is a different kind of story. Diana Hyland, luminous and elegant, was taken just as she was stepping into her most promising role, both on screen and in love. Lani O'Grady, always the strong one in fiction, spent a lifetime fighting battles that no script had prepared her for. Adam Rich, the smile of a generation, found himself lost in a world that adored the child but forgot the man. And Dick Van Patten, the father figure of an entire nation, slipped away with dignity, though far too quietly for a man who once meant so much to so many. They were not just actors, they were mirrors. Each of them reflected pieces of ourselves, our innocence, our fears, our grief, our longing for something whole in a world constantly falling apart. We remember them not for how they died, but for how they lived, for how they made us feel, for the way they brought heart and humanity to a simple family drama that somehow became something timeless. If these stories moved you, if the Bradfords still live somewhere in your memory, subscribe to this channel. Because behind every classic show is a cast of real people, with real joy, real pain, and real stories waiting to be told. And here, we remember them all.